Welcome back once again to the India Today Mood of the Nation poll being brought to you by Karvy Insights. Now remember, among all the issues that has confronted the government in 2020, none possibly bigger than the COVID pandemic. 2 million COVID cases and counting in India alone. How does the Prime Minister rate on that critical issue? Rahul, over to you.
All right, so how would people perceive the Prime Minister's handling of the COVID crisis? When this question was asked by India Today through Karvy, this is what we got. 29% saying the government's handling of the crisis has been outstanding. 48% think it's been good. That's almost half the respondents total. 77% think it's been good or outstanding. 18% think the average handling has been average. 5% think the handling of COVID has been poor. Net 77% are giving the government a thumbs up when it comes to the handling of the COVID crisis. What about the economic dimension of the COVID crisis? Just on the economic dimension, because there voters have indeed taken a big hit. But somehow, when this question was asked, 23% think that even the handling of the economic part of the COVID crisis has been outstanding. Now, I'm very curious to understand from our pollsters why that's the case. 48% think the handling of the economic aspect of the COVID crisis has been good. 22% think it's been average. And 6% think it's been poor. Raj Chingappa, does this make sense to you? There is a massive COVID crisis. There is a huge economic crisis as well. Yet despite that, when India Today through Karvy asks voters how they perceive the handling of this crisis, we're told that 71% think even on the economic part of the COVID crisis, people think the Modi government's done a good job.
Well, there are a couple of reasons, Rahul, and quickly. One is he assessed the situation pretty rapidly, had the lockdown, and people understood the reason because he had to buy time because India was not ready. India's health services has been, notoriously poor, and a disease like COVID could have spread rapidly. So he imposed a lockdown and told people why he had to do that. And in that 2 months, he was able to then all the critical parts, whether it was personal protection equipment that we are short of, which we had to import, whether it was beds, isolation wards, all that was set up. And therefore, if you look today, though we might have 2 million cases, close to that, yet our case fatality rate, which is around 2%, is one of the lowest in the world. And the recovery rate is about 63%. So people's perception is that there was a crisis. Mr. Modi acted along with his government and state governments correctly on this matter and saved a lot of lives.
Let me take that to Dr. Naresh Trehan,
which is the livelihood aspect of it.
I'll come to the livelihoods in a moment. Let me go to Dr. Trehan, Naresh Trehan, who's joining us at the moment. Dr. Trehan, your sense, do you believe that the perception is that the government is handling the crisis well, or it all depends on what happens over the next 6 months? Are we still midway through the crisis?
So you divide it into 3 parts. The first part was the lockdown part. The basic thing is that it is true, like the previous speaker said, that we were totally unprepared. We did not have the infrastructure to support any amount of COVID infection that would spread. So there was an acute shortage of PPEs and ventilators and stuff like that. But we got that breathing time in the first 3 months.
Right.
And everything was made in India. Now we are exporting ventilators. That's the great part of it.
Part 2?
Okay. The second part of it was that when the lockdown lifted, it was expected that the cases would increase and the surge will come. And where will it peak? We didn't know then, but we have an idea right now.
Right.
So you're saying 2 million cases plus 60,000 plus cases a day. So what happened was it started in Mumbai and Delhi. And now it's shifted to the south.
Point number 3.
I'm sorry?
Your third issue?
The third issue is that where do we go from here? So as we are opening up, if we are careful and we follow the 3 tenets that we have talked about the masking and the distancing and the hand hygiene, if we follow those tenets, we can still keep it under control. If the behavior pattern of our population is going to be irresponsible, then there will be a huge price to pay.
What's your broad sense, Dr. Trehan?
The interesting aspect, before you go to that, Rahul, the one aspect of this poll which is interesting is that people have been asked, COVID impact on your economic status. Lost my job, 22% say. Income suffered, say 63. Income increased, say a smaller number, about 18. And no change is 15. Now, if you look at lost my job and income suffered, that's about 85%. So 4 out of 5 in some way have been affected by the COVID pandemic. Yet they seem to be trusting the Prime Minister. It's coming back to trust. They trust the Prime Minister, even in the middle of a COVID pandemic, that he'll get things right somewhere. So I think when you're looking at perceptions,
no, but
even
it
though the
takes
reality
a lot.
is different,
It's almost as if it's a larger
they're not blaming
call.
him for it. They're not blaming the Prime Minister for my... They're suffering, they're not blaming him. And I think that's the important... I just want to get in Yogendra to get a political perspective on that. Yogendra, are you surprised with that? 63% say income suffered, lost my job, say 22, and yet people are saying they trust Modi. Or he's doing a good job.
Simple, good old opinion poll wisdom. When we look at these outstanding, good, bad, very bad figures, I have always said, and I used to say that 10 years ago as well, take out the good thing, because good is a lazy response that you get about every leader all the time. So what I would do normally is to pick outstanding and subtract from that bad or very bad figures. That gives you a sense. So the overall sense is that on COVID, people have on balance slightly positive image of Mr. Modi. They are slightly negative on the state government, and they are negative on the economy. That's the net. That's how an opinion pollster would read it. A serious opinion, you know, all these figures about 70, 80. These are nice things to play with on television screen. Second, please remember, yes, of course, there's an element of faith. And that's the important thing about Mr. Modi. He is someone who has gone above the normal thing of like and dislike. He has managed to create that bit of faith among people. But do remember that people who have this kind of a somewhat blind faith, when they go down, they also go down very, very rapidly. The last point that you
hasn't happened for 6 years.
Yes, of course, it hasn't happened for 6 years. It may not happen for another couple of years because people would look at options. They would. So really how the China thing plays out, how much Indians get to know really about what happened on the China border. Number two, how does this factor of economy? Of course, people say, I suffered. But the fact that I suffered doesn't mean that I blame the Prime Minister. These are very sensible people. They say, okay, I suffered, but everyone else suffered. The whole world suffered. Why do I blame the Prime Minister? But later on, if they feel that they got a raw deal, then the things can turn around, especially because we have not yet seen the peak of the COVID pandemic yet. So I would really wait for the next survey after 6 months.
Okay. Dr. Trehan, what's your real sense from a medical perspective of how India is doing so far in comparison with other countries? When we ask this question to our respondents to compare with other countries, the response that we seem to have got is that we're doing almost as well as other countries are doing, and some people, 43% of the respondents are saying we're actually doing better, 45% saying we're doing as good or well as badly as other countries. So is that fair that 43% say that we're actually doing better than other countries, Dr. Trehan?
So there is truth to the 45% that say better, and I'll tell you why. Because as part of the lockdown, we delayed the surge. And in this period, a lot of understanding the pathophysiology of the disease has been understood much better by us. To our aid are new drugs available, which are actually very effective at the viral multiplication stage. So the antivirals like the remdesivir and the favipiravir and all that have come very handy. Because of understanding the pathophysiology, we use the right, dexamethasone or TZ at the right time. We use anticoagulants at the right time. So all this has helped to reduce the mortality by half, at least, if not more. Now, I'll do one warning here. What has happened is, you take cities like Delhi, the decline is very evident. We don't know whether it will come back or not, but the neighboring areas are burning. You take UP and you take Bihar, and the knowledge of how to treat and the facilities available are still wanting.
Very good point. Happens is, you make a very strong point there, because that could well affect how the perception of this changes in the months ahead, because once you go into the large populous states, and if things are not managed well there, remember one of them, Bihar, is going to the polls. We don't know how that will play out. But let's get the politicians at this point. Pawan Kheda, let's be clear. We've gone through China, we've gone through economy, and we've gone through COVID in this survey. And in all those points, there's an element of trust in Mr. Modi. is that part of the problem, that you will have to combat that trust factor, not just through questioning the media and alleged misinformation, which you have every right to do, but also by giving us an alternative narrative? What's your narrative, the counter narrative of the opposition?
Rajdeep, the fact that there is a Prime Minister with 303 seats under his belt, he's here for the next 3.5 years, is a fait accompli. Now, why would anybody say, no, I want a change? Right now, there can't be a change because 303 seats hain, sahab. So, people realize that the moment for change will come 3.5 years later, and that's when they will think and talk about and they'll form their opinion about the change.
Counter narrative kya hai? Last time चौकीदार चोर है नहीं चला.
Absolutely,
अब क्या है?
absolutely.
अब क्या
now
है?
Today, you see the RBI's monetary policy. You see the dismal picture of the economy. Everybody, it's for everyone to see. You see the data on unemployment for everyone to see. 45 years record has been broken on unemployment. Everyone to see. Fact is, now China interferes in our elections, and it doesn't become a story. It should ideally be a story across board, all channels. Some outside force interfering in our elections is not a small thing. But then you say, don't criticize the media. I will not criticize the media. I'll just say that we are, as an opposition party, running against huge odds.
What is the narrative?
I say,
what is the narrative?
odds.
Very quickly.
So
what is the narrative?
Even if we talk about the economy in our narrative, we talk about border security in our narrative.
Okay.
We'll be made fun of. We'll be ridiculed. Fair enough. This is part of our fight. This is part of our struggle, and we are ready to fight.
Okay, now I want to look at this response, and Sudhanshu Trivedi needs to come in about direct transfers. And Dr. Trivedi, should the government have given direct transfers? 7 out of 10 respondents are saying yes. You know, you've missed, that's something that you've missed on. Every economist globally has been pushing for this. Even voters seem to think that direct cash benefit transfers should have been pushed to voters who've suffered, and you haven't done that. How do you respond to it, Dr. Trivedi?
First of all, I would like to say I haven't spoken for half an hour. So I want to have a time to respond to each and everything which is given. First, your survey indicates that those who were trying to put a question mark on the ability, capability, wisdom and other things of Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi of dealing with the COVID crisis should have been got a big jolt. And as my friend Mr. Pawan Kheda was saying, that it is considered fait accompli. Why? Because 6 years Prime Minister has not taken even a leave or vacation of 1 day, so not even 6 hours. On the other hand, his party leader, it is the last 6 months because of COVID, in which he has not gone for vacation abroad. So there is a difference. That's why the people of India are not, you can say, fooled. That's why there is a fait accompli. Not fait accompli. It's a fait in wisdom. It's very well clearly visible that who is who and how, with what capability, dedication they were. And now coming to that question which we have asked about the direct transfer. Yes, of course. What happened? Everybody likes to have a direct cash in their account, but in the time of lockdown, if somebody is having cash, how he will get the food? So that's why we have provided 80 crore people the ration. That is to be required. Then how you cook the food, because the gas availability was not easy. So that's why in Ujjwala Yojana, the 8 crore people have been given 3 months and subsequently 6 months of free gas. So that's also amount to direct cash transfer, which was not anywhere in the world. So that's why the government has done, which was more appropriate at the time to provide the food, to provide the fuel and other things so that they can sustain. Instead, if you have provided 2,000, 3,000, yes, we have also provided direct
so
cash.
you are...
But the entire thing in cash would have been of no use for those who were at the receiving end or the worst receiving end.
So it's don't worry, be happy. Don't worry, be happy. ऐसे ही चलता रहेगा. Y'all are completely comfortable. अब मोदी राज्य ही चलेगा.
जनाब, मैं सिर्फ ये कहना चाहूंगा कि सिर्फ एक कारण से राज्य नहीं चलता है. लीडर की कैपेबिलिटी देखिए.
ओके.
मोदी जी के परिवार के लोग कैसे हैं एंड अदर लोगों के परिवारों के, बाकी सारी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी के परिवार के लोग क्या डजनिंग प्रॉस्पेरिटी में रह रहे हैं. और आप ये देखिए, वेदर इट इज द इशू ऑफ नेशनलिज्म, वेदर इट इज द ऑस्टेरिटी, वेदर इट इज द इशू ऑफ करप्शन, वेदर इट इज द एबिलिटी. अभी योगेंद्र यादव जी कह रहे थे ना, इट विल टेक इट हैज सिंस 2 decades. मोदी जी became CM in 2001. and his popularity is consistently going on, increasing in 90 years. So there must be some reason about it.
Okay. Point taken. We've tried to look at that reason today. We've tried to analyze that.
I disagree with what you just said about, don't worry, be happy. That's not their perception. In the way that they see it, they are working as hard as they possibly can. And ultimately, it's for voters to decide whether they like what's being done or not. This mood of the nation.
At the end of the day,
how can I quote one sentence?
Very quickly.
Several years back, Modi ji has written an article in a newspaper. I do not remember. That was the English newspaper. I do not remember what. उन्होंने क्या लिखा था? Other parties think in terms of years. We think in terms of millennium. Our thinking is civilizational. So ये 5 साल 10 साल का बहुत अच्छा.
The other people who think in terms of decades and millennia are the Chinese. And so there is that other conflict also, in terms of long thought.
I think let's be very clear. Mr. Modi at the moment is the supreme leader. And I think this cover of India Today, the Modi Rajya really reflects that. I mean, it's a play on Ram Rajya. But it is Modi Rajya.
It's also a reflection of the way things are.
Look, I thought there was one image that spoke 1,000 words, Rahul, during the Bhumi Pujan. Mr. Modi, center of all attention, Mohan Bhagwat, Sarsang Chalak on the side watching him. Mr. Modi is now quite simply the supreme leader both within his saffron brotherhood and beyond. And I think it will require the opposition to mount a real challenge at different levels, organizational, ideological, work even harder than him to, in a sense, defeat Modi.
And if they keep
firing... I don't believe anyone is invincible. So I don't... when it is suggested by Sudhanshu, ye 2001 se chal raha, that's true. But no one is invincible. But for now, we can say it is Modi Rajya.
And this has been an interesting conversation. We've been able to cover different dimensions, the mood in the nation right now. I want to thank all our guests for joining us for this special broadcast. I hope you enjoyed and benefited from this analysis as well. We'll slip into a break. We'll have more for you. Thank you very much.
That's right. And if you want to have more, if you want to get more, just read the latest issue of the India Today magazine. This is the mood of the nation. That's what you want. That's what you get. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.